Can I just ask a quick question there, Tara? I'm just wondering, did yourself and your colleagues, as you began to do your research, did you discuss what your values were, and were they common to you all, or had you agreed upon them, or how did that whole situation pan out?
So, I mean, that's where we use the nominal group technique. Right at the outset, we were developing answers to questions around teaching and learning and questions around educational justice. So yes, we did, and we spent quite some time on that. And what's interesting, Maureen, is that we got to these statements that we had all collaboratively agreed, and we I put them on a flip chart, I think it was, and then I kept that and I brought that back to other meetings. But actually then what happened was, during the processes of the research and when we encountered things that we weren't comfortable with, suddenly the shared values kind of started to come apart as individual values, beliefs and motivations kind of got in the way a little bit. So yes, we did, but what it didn't do necessarily was pave this perfectly calm path for us to walk.
Yeah, really interesting. It's always something that puzzles me, that, how do my values be, not become everybody's values, but, how do they meld in with everybody else? And I love the idea as well. I really love that it wasn't a perfect path towards, success. That's one of my favorite ideas. That's great. Thanks a million, Tara. Thank you.
Jane, your hands up.
Yeah, thanks so much, Tara. It's just so interesting to hear about your role. It's such an important role, like, widening participation, and we can all see how impassioned you are about it. And just to share that process. And as Maureen said, the idea that all our action research is perfect, and that there's a vulnerability in sharing, the things that go wrong. And I know Andy Convery would be of the mind of, the more problems, the better for reading, and in a real comical way, that nobody wants a happy ending action research story. But obviously there is, great outcomes and everything, but, it's really brave to kind of to share all the, the challenges. And I think the insider outsider, like you listed about 5 or 6 different elements to that. It's not just one, and it changes as the process changes, as well as maybe year 2, you feel it in a different way, because maybe you felt like the outsider researcher, but then maybe you're on top of that part and somebody else feels inferior in that respect. So it's so complex, and action research is so complex. And for, often action research detractors, put it in a box as being quite simplistic, or, not really a research method. It's, if they need to watch presentations like this to be reinformed. So thanks for sharing.
Thanks, Jane.
Brian?
Tara, I think you've raised some really important points there with widening participation and academic staff, and relationship between professionals and academics in an institution. And also, I think there's lessons to be learned there from also professional staff working in disability services and academics. It could almost be copied over and done again, with the same methodologies and the ideas. And so there's a lot of really valuable points there, I think.
Thank you, Brian. Yes, well, I do actually say that, hopefully some of the learning is very much generalizable across all of the professional staff in universities, because obviously it's not just WP staff who have that experience. So thank you for picking up on that.
Okay.
Yeah, Bernie.
Yeah, just Tara, following on from what Jane said there, I think, it was kind of obvious listening to you that there was a lot of conflict and a lot of contradictions and so on throughout the research. And of course, that brings to mind, people like Meller and Tina Cook and those who did say action research is just full of messiness and uncertainties and all of that. But I was just wondering, were you aware of these tensions throughout, and how did that affect your research? Did you feel obliged to try and resolve them, or did you learn to live with them? Or, you know, how did you deal with them as you went through your research?
I think a bit of both is the answer, really. I think the facilitator and the teacher in me wanted to resolve the tension and make everything lovely for everybody. But that wasn't always possible because there were all the additional limitations, which I haven't even gone into, obviously, of doing a part-time doctorate alongside a job, and also that my co-researchers were doing this out of the kindness of their hearts and giving of their time just freely. So there were time limitations as well. So there were also pragmatic decisions to be made about having to move things on when you might have wanted to spend, I don't know, another 3 months talking or dealing with some of the conflict or confusion. So I just had to try and navigate the path as carefully as possible, whilst also bearing in mind that I couldn't spend 15 years writing this doctorate. So it was getting comfortable with the discomfort, actually, and keeping going.
Okay, thank you. That makes sense.
Certainly does. I'm actually, oh, Getska, yeah, sorry. Unmute yourself there, yeah.
Yeah, Tara, thank you very much. I really enjoyed seeing your presentation. Actually, I would like very much to read it in deep. Oh, if you could give me the reference, I will be very happy to read it. And it just came to my mind, if you are planning to repeat the same experience with another group, and what would you expect to find if that is so? Because you did a whole plan for your action research, and you really got a lot of information from that. So what are your expectations for the future concerning all what you did? Will be just left there, or are you planning to follow up?
So do you mean in terms of practice or research?
Yes, both.
Practice.
Both.
Oh, both.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of practice, it's very interesting because so much has changed for me just having done that research, and now I have a role in the school, which is a senior role, a temporary, role. I'm doing it for 3 years, and now suddenly I have this platform to talk about teaching and learning, which I know about and I always knew about, but because I have this temporary director of equality, diversity and inclusion role, suddenly I've been given this platform. And I think part of that is just because it's been seen that I've been doing this research and I've been leading on something that perhaps colleagues hadn't really thought about in the past. So even though I didn't get that role because of doing the research, I think I have stood taller as a result of I suppose, inquiring into my practice, and by virtue of doing so, finding out about the wider practice that we engage with. So I have stood taller. As a result, I've ended up in this role, and it means my voice is now heard, because I write a lot in my thesis about not being heard, and now my voice is heard.
Mm-hmm.
So that which is a good thing, just because, again, it's an equality, diversity and inclusion role. It's still about inclusion and mitigating against disadvantage, which is what makes me get out of bed in the morning. In terms of research, I don't know. I'm having a sleep at the moment, thanks, because I just passed my Viva last week, so I need a rest.
Good, thank you very much.
That's super, and congratulations on that milestone, Tara. Very well done.